Good morning, everyone. Let's start the program. We are together to get educate about process of innovation development impact series 2021-2022, sponsored by Ministry of Education Innovation Cell, New Delhi. I would like to thank Ministry of Education Innovation Cell for sponsoring us this for past consecutive 3 years. This is Neha Akramin from 2nd ECB. Today with us, Dr. Hiran Vedam ma'am is with us to educate us. Now I would like to thank ma'am for your time. Dr. Hiran Vedam ma'am is a business consultant for investors and startups in climate tech. She is also a senior advisor for innovation and entrepreneurship at IIT Tirupati. She has considered experience in different areas of the lab to market journey from research to entrepreneurship, technology transfer, and early stage investors in the US, UK, Singapore, and India. She is the educator of AIM Prime Playbook, which is a practical guide to science-based entrepreneurs published by Venture Center and Atal Innovation Mission India. She also has a YouTube channel, World of Deep Tech, which is to familiarize young researchers on various aspects of commercializing advanced technologies. She also developed a mentoring framework for guiding mentors of session band startups in collaboration with a seasoned angel investor. Hiran Ma'am is a chemical engineer with a PhD from Purdue University, MS from Washington University, and BTech from Indian Institute of Technology, Madras. She also has an MBA from INSTEAD. Now I would like to hand over the session to the ma'am. Ma'am?
Hello, everyone. Um, Thank you for that warm introduction. Um, Today, I will be talking to you about the process of innovation. So let me get started. Can you see my presentation? All right. Let's find, before we get into the process of innovation development, let's try to understand what is innovation. As I understand it, most of the audience today are undergrad students. So the focus would be more on innovation at that level than at the research-based innovation. If you want more details about the research-based innovation approaches, we'll talk about it at the end. But primarily, the focus today would be on innovation development as it applies to the undergrad level. Okay. Before I start, are there any questions or anything you want to ask me? Okay, all right. Given that there are no questions, let me get started. So, what is innovation? It is innovation has been looked at by different people in slightly different ways. Okay, they have looked at it and defined it as a systematic and organized search for changes. So that could be called an innovation because you're looking to identify what are the changes and why those particular changes are happening and investigating the causes and solutions for that. Or it could be a systematic analysis of opportunities. That's also called innovation. And it is a means by which, from an entrepreneurial perspective, innovation is about entrepreneurs exploiting change in order to create a new service or a business opportunity. So, in the broadest sense, innovation is about finding the right problem and finding a solution for it. So, if you can identify a good, meaningful problem and find a solution for it, that is innovation. Okay. And there are different forms of innovation that different organizations and different companies have come up. Let's try to understand some of these. So there can be broadly, if you look at all the businesses around us, the innovation that these companies and businesses have offered to the world can be broadly classified into three different categories. One is around a new configuration for the market or the product or the service. Okay. Or it could be a different offering or it's a different experience. All right. So what do we mean by that? When we say a different configuration, um, most newspapers, they were offering news for free and making money by providing ads and mainly ad revenue, right? But New York Times said that they will go for a different business model where they would ask the subscribers to pay for it. Okay, but it would be ad free, there are no distractions, and it would be the quality content that New York Times provides. So that's a innovative profit model they came up with. Okay, Henry Ford, when he started making automobiles way back several decades ago, he was the first one to automate the production line so that you can produce a lot more cars in a standardized manner. He is also the one who integrated the supply chain, and that really helped him capture the market in a meaningful way, and avoid competition or keep competition at least at bay for as long as possible. Okay, so that's a network innovation. So he looked at the supply chain and figured out how to control that so that he has a competitive advantage. Then there is the structural kind of innovation where a company says, okay, 20% of your time is yours to do anything new or any personal projects that you want to tap into. Okay. And Google adopted that, and Gmail that all of us use is a result of that innovative time management for the employees. Okay, most companies, if you go to them and the employers, we tell them 20% of the time they won't be contributing anything that you can, attribute to your balance sheet or something. Then most companies will get very agitated. But by giving this opportunity, companies like Google, 3M have managed to create very innovative solutions. And then there is the process innovation for McDonald's. So McDonald's is known for its very systematic approach and standardization of the production of the burgers or other products in the market in their chains. But then they realized that as they were expanding to international markets, as they were expanding even within the US, they realized that the tastes are not exactly the same everywhere. So they introduced allowed the franchisees to come up with their own products, and if they were successful, in fact actually take those products and adapt them to other parts of their franchise. So that allowed them to expand and provide food items that are more suitable to the target their customers. Okay. Then there is the offering, a new way to offer the service. Most of you students are quite familiar with Spotify and probably use it extensively. And one of the advantages of Spotify is the seamless service it provides when it is, whether it's podcasts or whether it is music all of this. So it makes it very easy and a good user experience, right? When it was introduced, the user experience for Spotify was much better than some of the other products, which is why it could take the market share from other streaming services. And Apple, as probably many of you know, um, has a product system. So if I own a iMac or a MacBook Pro, an iPad, and iPhone, all of these together provide a much richer and quality experience to me as a user than having just one of those. If I just had an iPhone, I could do a lot of some smart things. But really, the value by adding every other product I add in the Apple's basket will non-linearly increase the value of the Apple products to me. Okay, so that's the offering innovation that they're providing. Then there is the experience. How do you provide a better service? Okay, so this could be Amazon Prime. So by asking the customers to pay a little extra, Amazon allowed you to access on-time delivery or 2-hour delivery. And now with Amazon Fresh, you can get it almost next day or same day, and so on. Nespresso is a company in the US which provides these machines for getting a hot cup of coffee, and they just like the cartridges in the printers. You can buy these small cups that you see here, and then load them up and press a button, pour some water, press a button, you would get hot water. Okay, hot coffee immediately. Okay, and Patagonia, I mean, if you're in the sustainability space, you would have heard about it. They are very, environmentally friendly, especially in terms of cruelty to animals and so on. So they have positioned themselves as, a sustainable product, and that's what makes it valuable. Um, so so all these solutions are about the experience around, innovation around the experience you offer to your customers. Okay, so innovation as a whole can be kind of in a new process that you have come up with, or a new product you have developed, or a new business model. If you look at most of the e-commerce kind of businesses, you see they are all around new business model. They are offering the same product. I mean, I can buy the same shoes in a store, in a footwear store next to me, or I can buy it online. Okay, but what makes it different is the way it is offered to me. The business model around pay first and then get your goods later. All of this that, and online shopping and all of that provides Amazon an advantage over the retail store next door. Okay, or a product innovation. So Apple product, I mean the phone may have some phones will have better attributes compared to some other phones. So that's why you might buy that product. Or a process. So I can produce the same product at half the price, or I can produce the product at 20% cheaper than what the competitors spending. All of this will lead to a competitive advantage. So these are the different ways in which you can innovate in coming up with new solutions, new products. Okay. Another way to look at innovation is to broadly classify them into, like, how well can I characterize the problem? How well can I define the problem? And also look at, is the domain well defined? So do I know exactly which, I mean, am I going into automobile industry? Am I going into manufacturing industry, or am I going into consumer, financial industry? Which industry am I going to? And so depending on how well each of these is defined, you can come up with different kinds of innovations. So the academic research that you see happening in the university is mostly where problems are not so well defined and the domains are also not very well defined. So you are trying to understand the, um, problems which are kind of fuzzily defined. Okay. Whereas disruptive innovations, which we will touch upon later, are around, they're looking at something existing and trying to see how do I change the way things are done so that the customer, I might be able to address a slightly different market than the incumbents, the existing players. Okay. And sustaining innovations, which is what we'll be talking about now going forward. Okay. So, what are the sources of innovative opportunity? So, if you look at, where do I get ideas? So, this is a question most undergraduates in my class, when I ask them to come up with ideas for product development, they're like, where do I get an idea? I don't know how to come up with an idea. Okay. um, I mean, obviously you cannot create ideas in vacuum. um, I mean, sometimes it happens, but like serendipity, right? So for example, all of you are familiar with how benzene structure was defined by Kekule when he was sort of dozing off in the afternoon, when he saw a snake kind of moving around, and suddenly he saw the snake catching its tail, and that inspired him to define the benzene ring structure that we see, the C6H6 structure, which is with a ring in the middle. But the serendipity is not in isolation, right? He had been thinking about it, he had been doing research on this for a very, very long time. And it just that afternoon, it all came together to come up with the structure. So serendipity, it doesn't mean that you don't do anything and you just wait for ideas to, pop in your head. You're investigating, you're gathering information, you're putting it all together, and suddenly you get that spark of inspiration or that innovative idea. Sometimes you notice some things that are not quite the way it should be, right? um, I mean, all of us have waited for a service person to come. They will say, "Oh, I'm coming this morning," and then like you wait, 10 o'clock goes, 11 o'clock goes, 12 o'clock goes, the guy is not here. I mean, that's not the way service is supposed to be. Right? So you that might be an opportunity for somebody to say, "Okay, what can I do to address this problem?" Okay, or a process need, childcare or any of these would sometimes the way childcare works or the way your own mess works. You look at it and say, okay, I mean, we could improve. Maybe there are long waiting lines in your mess hall, and then what can you do to reduce the time it takes for your mess workers to serve each of you. So that could be a process innovation, right? Or, I mean, industry structure is changing or industry is changing. If you look at the automobile industry today, there are electric vehicles coming up. Then there is the BS6 mandates that are there, CNG vehicles coming. All of these are changes in the industry that are kind of leading to new opportunities for electric vehicle makers, for existing players to figure out what they can do. So there's a lot of room for innovation in the automobile industry. Okay, or there is new knowledge. So somebody has come up with, let's say, tomorrow's every day there are new breakthroughs coming up in nuclear fusion. Okay, so if your all this new knowledge around nuclear fusion will create new industries around fusion reactors, EPC around fusion reactors, policy, all of this. So that the very fact that we have now cracked the nuclear fusion problem creates new opportunities for people, for startups, and for existing companies to create something, new products and solutions, right? Or demographic changes. So if you look at the West, or Europe or Japan or even China, they have an aging population. But if you look at somebody like India, we have a younger population. So the needs, and but maybe over the next few decades, even our country will get to the stage where there are more middle-aged people than younger ones, because the birth rates are falling. So what does that mean in terms of new services, new products that these changing demographics need? Okay, so all of this will contribute. So the way to come up with innovative ideas and solve the problems is through a process called design thinking. So now let me share with you a short video on design thinking process.
Design thinking is a 5-step process to come.
Can you hear the volume? Hello? Can you hear the volume?
Yes,
With
ma'am, we
meaningful
can hear.
ideas that solve real problems for a particular group of people. The process is taught in top design and business schools around the world. It has brought many businesses lots of happy customers and helped entrepreneurs from all around the world to solve problems with innovative new solutions. Step 1. Empathize. The purpose of Step 1 is to conduct interviews that give you an idea about what people really care about. We need to empathize with their situation. For example, if you want to help old people, you might find that they want to keep the ability to walk around. In your conversations, they might share with you different ways they can do that. Later into the interview, you'll want to dig a little deeper. Look for personal stories or situations where things became difficult. Ideally, you redo the process with many people with the same problem. Step 2. Define the problem. Looking at the interviews, you can now understand the actual needs that people are trying to fulfill with certain activities. One way to do that is to underline the verbs or activities that the people mentioned when talking about their problems, like going for a walk, meeting old friends for tea, or simply going grocery shopping around the corner store. You might realize it's not so much about going out, but more about staying in touch. After your analysis, formulate a problem statement. Some elderly are afraid to be lonely. They want to stay connected. Step 3. Ideate. Now focus only on the problem statement and come up with ideas that solve the problem. The point is not to get a perfect idea, but rather to come up with many ideas, like unique virtual reality experiences, senior-friendly hoverboards, or a modified pushcart. Whatever it is, sketch up your best ideas and show them to the people you are trying to help, so you can get their feedback. Step 4. Prototype. Now take a moment to reflect on what you have learned from your conversations about the different ideas. Ask yourself, how does your idea fit in the context of people's actual lives? Your solution could be a combination of a new idea and what is already being used. Then connect the dots, sketch up your final solution, and go build a real prototype that's just good enough to be tested. Step 5. Test. Now test your prototype with actual users. Don't defend your idea in case people don't like it. The point is to learn what works and what didn't, so any feedback is great. Then go back to ideation or prototyping and apply your learning. Repeat the process until you have a prototype that works and solves the real problem. Now you are ready to change the world or open shop. To experience design thinking firsthand, do the free virtual design thinking crash course from Stanford's D School right now. You will learn to design a new gift-giving experience. Find the link and a guide for facilitators in the description below. After you are done, share your experience and gift idea in the comments. To learn more about creative and critical thinking, check out our other Sprouts videos. And if you want to support our channel,
Okay, I hope you got a feel for how the yeah, you can you see my presentation back? Okay, so now we have understood how the design thinking process works. So the first step is to gather the requirements from the user, come up with a design by ideating, coming up with the problem definition, and coming up with solutions, prototyping, and so on. Then develop prototypes, test them, and figure out how to track and monitor the performance of them and fine tune the requirements. Okay, so this is the whole design process that we need to do for coming up with new ideas. All right, clear? Now, let's try to understand the value of design thinking. So design thinking is something that's been thrown around a lot in our, whenever we talk about innovation, in several contexts, right? But design thinking is suitable only for certain kinds of problems. It's not suitable for everything, all right? So you need to be aware of when it's applicable, when it's not applicable. So let's look at this short video on when this design thinking is applicable, okay?
I'm going to draw a diagram that explains the general situation of how design differs from the standard engineering / MBA approach to innovation. The normal way is you start with an existing product, say an MP3 player, and you analyze how people use MP3 players and how much they spend and the technology and what the technology roadmap is and what's the competition. You do a good job of analyzing it, and you develop product two, a different MP3 player. This works when people don't have much choice of other things and when their competition is predictable and when things don't change very quickly. This is a way that worked very well in the mid part of the 20th century. And it still works well for those organizations that aren't changing very quickly, if you can find one. But there's a different way of looking at this. Let's put this in context where you analyze things over here and you create new stuff over here. But there's an additional dimension where you abstract the idea and don't go directly from the real product one to a real product two. Instead, you abstract it. So let's take the MP3 player. Instead of going from MP3 player one and MP3 player two, let's say Apple could have done that. They could have looked at current MP3 players and come up with the iPod and maybe even iTunes. But they abstracted it so that the problem wasn't MP3 players, it was enjoying music. They were noticing that the way people were enjoying music is they were sharing it illegally, so the music industry leaders, the publishers, sued their customers. You know that's not a sign of a good industry when that occurs. They were noticing that people were starting to walk around with the music by putting it on their laptops. And they had a vision. They created a number of options for what a new music industry could be. And they had various ideas about what that could be. And they started, of course, with iTunes. Then they came out with the iPod, which we thought was cool because now we could walk around with it with a machine that was easier to use than a Macintosh to listen to music. Then they started to sell music through iTunes, and that was a big difference. So they had a whole system of options up here of how to help people enjoy music. And from there, they drove down to a system of products that gives them 70% ownership of the digital music business in America. And what really protects it is speed, insight, great design, and building a system rather than a single product. This is what design can do, is it can abstract the problem and create options. This abstraction is highly ambiguous, and it frequently drives people coming in here with MBAs or engineering degrees crazy for the first month or two, because they wonder why we're not just doing the new MP3 player, and why are we questioning what it should be, and why would a company that makes computers go into the music business anyway? But interestingly enough, this map illustrates probably the most iconic story of innovation in the country this decade.
Okay, so I hope, I saw several students raising their hands. Is there anything you want to ask, or is there any question? Because I was hoping somebody will type something on your chat box. Are there any questions? Okay, if not, let's continue with the presentation. So there are different schools of design thinking. So if you saw the presentation, the talk you just saw, you will notice that design thinking is about abstracting out the current product, understanding the gaps into exactly what the user is trying to accomplish, and coming up with innovative solutions at the abstract, and then reducing it to actual practice. So you saw how Apple, instead of just taking the MP3 player and trying to figure out what product, how to build a better MP3. This is what's known as the building a better mousetrap approach, trying to figure out exactly what people are trying to accomplish with the MP3 player, and try to solve that problem and try to come up with solutions to meet that particular need. Okay, so Stanford D School approach for design thinking splits it into 5 different steps. First is the empathize process. And this you already saw in the first video I showed today, where you're trying to empathize with the user, define their requirements, ideate, prototype, and test. So this is one way to kind of divide the design thinking process into different discrete steps. All right. So there is a more elaborate example of design thinking where IDEO, which is a company based in San Francisco, they were trying to come up with a better shopping cart that we can use in the grocery stores. And this video, which is about 30 minutes long, you can look at this. I've showed you the link here. You can look at it offline, where they go through all the steps and discuss how each of these steps is actually done. So for those of you who are interested in learning a little bit more about design thinking, I would strongly encourage you to go through this. Okay, today we won't be going through it. I just want to mention that this is available on Vimeo and you can look at it. Okay, so to summarize the design thinking process, it's essentially for abstract problems. And one of the key assumptions in design thinking is that we are not trying to come up with new technologies or anything. The technology is assumed to be known and available. User is also assumed to be known. So it's not like we are trying to go on, customer discovery process where we are trying to understand who is the customer, who is the user, how will they use it, all of that. That's already known. Okay, and user needs are identified, abstracted, and well understood. And doesn't the ideation process in the design thinking isn't very clearly defined. It says, okay, you have to come up with a lot of ideas, use post-it notes, and somehow come to, narrow down the six different, top a few ideas and go from there. But it really doesn't give a very structured approach to ideation. All right. Um, this is where the inventive problem solving approach comes in. This approach really focuses on the ideation part of it and helps us come up with different ways we can ideate effectively. Okay, so what are the key principles of inventive problem solving? One is identify what is the perfect solution that is possible for any particular problem. Okay, identify what are the contradictions. When you say this is the perfect solution, it's not always so. One will say you want the best product but also the cheapest product, so that's a contradiction, right? You want very good battery life, but you also want it to be light. Okay, or you want a good battery performance but you want it to be cheap. So these are contradictory requirements. So you identify them when you define what is your ideal solution. You will identify these contradictory requirements, and then figure out how to resolve these conflicts while maximizing the resources, utilization of the resources you have available to you. So the process defines something called an ideality function, where you maximize the benefits from the solution while minimizing the cost of the solution and the harm it can do. Okay, because if you're trying to come up with a chemical, it might provide you a lot of benefit, but it might be very expensive, or it could cause a lot of environmental damage, right? So you want to balance all these three, and an ideal solution is one that has maximum benefits while minimizing the costs and harm it can harm that can happen. So this is based on a framework called TRIS, where problems and solutions are repeated across industries and sciences. So TRIS is the people who came up with this approach. They looked at problem solutions across different industries, across different domains, and I classified the kind of contradictions that you have, the kind of solutions people have come up with. They've looked at how the technical evolution happens, and came up with what is the process of innovation. Okay, and based on that, the way to solve any specific problem is to abstract out the problem and map it to all these classes of problems that Chris has in its database, and look at how the generic problem was solved. So what is the generic approach to solve this particular problem? So come up with a generic solution, and then bring it down to the specific solution by using a process of analogy. Okay, so what does that mean? Okay, now let's take the same MP3 problem, right? What is the specific problem? I want to develop a better, okay, let's take the example of, fires in electric vehicle. Okay, so you can abstract out the problem and say that, poor performance or hazardous, hazards caused by a product. Okay, and look at all the different ways people have analyzed hazards, maybe in the chemical industry, in the aerospace industry, even in the automobile industry. How have people tried to analyze these hazards or safety related issues, and then how have they solved it? Okay, and based on the way they have solved it, you kind of come up with a solution and see how can I reduce that to solving fires in electric vehicles. Okay, and then define the solution. Okay, so let's try to identify, let's try to understand the specific, how do you identify the specific problem? So one approach is to ask the Kipling's questions. So what's the Kipling's question? So there are 5 W's, which means the 5 who, what, when, and those kind of questions, and H, which is the how. So who is affected? What's the problem? How is it a problem? Why is it a problem? When is it a problem? And where is it a problem? Okay. And then you say, so, and of course, so by looking at all of this, you can get to the root of the problem. Okay. Similarly, or you can keep repeatedly asking why, like most, young children, they're curious people. So whenever you tell them something, they'll keep repeatedly asking why. But that curiosity is good when you're trying to identify a good problem. And there you can say, by repeatedly asking why, why and why and why, you would get to the root of the problem. Okay. And once you have the problem, how do I develop a solution? Okay. Here, there are different techniques. And one approach is called Scamper. Okay. So this is, there are several, 7 different ways you can identify a solution, starting with something that you have. Okay. One is a substitution method. So you take something that exists, substitute it with something else to come up with a better solution. Okay. Combine. So how do you combine 2 things and come up with a new solution? Okay. How do you adapt an existing thing for new uses? Okay. So take a medicine that is used for something. How can you adapt its usage for some other, disease, for example? Which is what, if you, during COVID, people took a lot of existing medication and tried to explore how that can be used, adapted for use on COVID patients before all the new medicines came out, right? How do you modify or magnify something, a feature of a product, or how do you modify a particular part of a process so that you get better performance? Okay. Or you take what exists and see how to put it to alternate use. Okay. You might have, most of you have seen these use and throw water bottles that are used by people for a variety of purposes, not just for water. They use it to store oil. They use it, cut them and then use them for, focusing the sunlight in, poor slum dwellings. So this plastic material, people use that as insulating material. So you take the same bottle and use it for different uses, right? Or you can eliminate as part of the product and maybe come up with a new use or come up with an entirely new class of products. Okay, or reverse it. I mean, if you take a bottle and reverse it, put it upside down, that's a new use, right? So let's look at some examples. So if you look at Velcro, Velcro came out of, taking something, all these birds that were sticking to people's, woolen clothes. And and looking at it and saying, okay, those hooks that are there can be used to stick to things. So Velcro came out of adapting something that exists in nature for for alternate uses. Then there is the trolley bag, which combines a trolley and a bag to come up with a new product that is easier to transport, easier to carry, and move around. Okay. Then you have this rotary dial phone, which probably most of the students here may not recognize, but replacing that with the rotary dial with touched dial is one sort of innovation. Eliminating the card is another way of innovating. So we moved from a corded phone to a cordless phone. And by increasing the range, by putting the towers outside instead of the basic station um, uh, that you are connected to a line, wired the line at home. If you can, put towers around the city, you could now carry a mobile phone and take it anywhere. So that's the other innovation. That would be like, increasing the range and coming up with new applications. Okay, I mentioned about drugs being put to alternate use. Viagra is a good example of that. When they developed it, it was for hypertension and heart diseases, where it performed poorly on trials. But then they found the alternate use for it, and they brought it to the market for that particular use. Then there are these squeeze bottles, basically taking your bottle and putting it upside down, reversing it, has provided a completely different solution. So if you look at the scamper approaches, these are the innovative approaches that people have used to come up with a new product or a new innovation in the market. So this is how you would do it. All right. So that's about ideation, design thinking, and so on. So the other thing people hear about quite often is disruptive innovation. People, I mean, whenever people think of innovation or people talk about innovation, in layman terms, people say, oh, well, you have to come up with disruptive innovation. But what exactly is a disruptive innovation? Let's try to understand it by using this short video, okay?
How does a small, young company beat an industry giant on its own turf? Through what Harvard Business School professor Clayton Christensen calls disruptive innovation. It works like this. Big players focus on sustaining innovation, upgrading existing products and services to attract higher-paying customers. But soon, they start to ignore all the regular customers who just want simple, low-cost alternatives. That's where the entrepreneurial company jumps in, with that basic offering. The big guys stay focused on more profitable customers and begin to overserve, adding bells and whistles no one wants to pay for. Meanwhile, the disruptor improves its product to appeal to more people. By the time the incumbent notices, the disruptor has already started to take over the market. Appeal to more people. But the classic example is the steel mini mills, which first produced low-quality rebar, then moved to sheet steel, stealing business from the large mills that had been dominant. More recent disruptors include car makers like Toyota and Hyundai, which launched with economy models and added luxury features and brands. The only way for industry giants to fight back is by launching their own disruptive innovations. To succeed, they must treat the project as a separate unit with a different business model and growth expectations. Ask, what job do customers need to get done? Segment customers by job, not by product, market size, or demographics. And develop basic, low-cost ways to get the job done. That's how Procter & Gamble came up with Crest White Strips, a cheap, do-it-yourself alternative to an expensive dental service. Disruptive innovation creates new markets and reshapes existing ones. To achieve growth in a fast-changing world, You want to be a disruptor. Don't be disrupted.
Okay, so I hope you got an idea of what disruptive innovation is and how it is different from regular innovation. Okay, and what you're trying to do is that as the market moves, in essence, what you're trying to do is that as the performance improves, there comes a time when the curve essentially flattens and the existing players are trying to just do little changes here and there to keep the business running. So that's when a new incumbent can come and say, a new startup can come and offer such the basic really a service that the customer needs and then come up with innovative solutions. So that's the disruptive part of it. Now that happens on the market saturation and all of it. Sometimes technology itself saturates and then there is a need to come up with new technology based solutions. Okay, for example, now the ICE based automobile sector is pretty much mature. There's not, and the technology wise, it's kind of stabilized and flattened. So that's where new innovations around electric vehicles or hydrogen based fuel cell vehicles, all of this would change the landscape and move it in a completely different direction. So this is what is required, and that's where the breakthrough innovations are required. But today's talk, as I mentioned, I won't be talking about this. But if you're interested, we have covered all of this in this book that along with Venture Center and Atul Innovation, we've come up with this book which talks specifically about science-based entrepreneurship and science-based innovation. And you can, and this is available at Playbook, this website I'm showing you. You can learn more about it there. All right, with that, I thank you and open it up for any questions anybody has. Over to you. Hello?
Guys, do you have any questions? Okay, ma'am. It seems don't have any questions. Thank you for
Okay.
your wonderful session, ma'am. Now everyone got an idea about process of innovation development. And thank you for your time in your hectic schedule.
Okay, so if there are no more questions, then we end the session. Is that what it is?
Okay, sir. Okay, ma'am.
Are we
Apart from
done,
those
or
who
is
have
there
joined
anything we
here,
need to? Sorry, I'm a little confused.
apart from those who have joined here, it was projected in the seminar hall for second year students, ma'am.
Okay, all right. All right, so I can leave now, right?
Okay, ma'am. Let me present oath of thanks, ma'am. Let me thank Principal Ma'am T. Kalpalata Reddy Garu and those who have joined, and your presence means a lot for everyone. Thank you, everyone. You can leave the session now. Thank you.